1. So I work at an Indian restaurant that serves a buffet at lunch. Our lunch buffet can get overwhelmingly busy sometimes, as we are very short-staffed, usually only 2 servers at a time. A couple of months ago, I was scheduled on what turned out to be an average busy day. We have a sign up front during buffet hours that says, "Please seat yourself." We greet every customer at the door whenever possible, but when it gets busy, sometimes the best we can do is say, "You're welcome to seat yourself. Someone will be right with you," from across the restaurant. As I'm ringing up another customer, a posh-looking Indian man comes inside. I never got his name. Let's just call him Archie. He's looking around the restaurant for a seat while standing by the door. It's busy and my coworker is helping another customer, so I tell him he can be seated, but he had no reaction. I assumed he didn't hear me, so I repeated myself. Still no reaction. I didn't want to keep shouting across the dining room, so I just thought, he'll see the sign, and continued to ring up the customer in front of me. Shortly after, Archie walks over to a table, and he speaks to me using formal vocabulary that most people only use in essays and business letters. Something along the lines of, "I wish to inquire with the owner of this restaurant. May I have bowls instead of plates? Curry is not meant to be eaten from a plate such as this." This is impractical for us, because we don't have nearly as many bowls as we do plates. Archie is sitting all by himself. I don't think it'd be fair if we let him have all the large bowls, while other customers use plates. But I ask the chef, also the owner anyway. He tells me to show him these tiny metal bowls we have out, mainly for chutneys and raita, Indian sauces, and have Archie use those. The metal bowls can barely contain 4 fluid ounce, so I doubt Archie would be satisfied. But I did as my boss said, and even brought a stack of them to his table, for some extra convenience. Unsurprisingly, he's annoyed, but I apologize and explain that this is all we can give him. He asks for water to drink, and I bring it to him, and check up on other tables. A few minutes later, Archie asks me where the bathroom is. I'm a little busy still, but I clearly tell him that it's down the hall, the only hall that's clearly visible, and on the right. He gives me a look of disgust and walks to the bathroom. I help a few more customers and he sits back down and requests a whole pitcher of water to himself. Again, this is impractical for us because we only have 3 water pitchers for the whole restaurant. But I let him have one anyway. It's finally starting to slow down, for what felt like hours, when in reality it was probably only 15 minutes since Archie arrived, and I check up on him. Me, "Does everything taste all right, sir?" Archie, "I'm not telling." I was caught off guard. What the hell kind of response is that? Me, "Excuse me?" Archie, "I'm not telling." Me, "I'm sorry, but could you tell me why, sir?" As this man speaks to me now, he doesn't look in my direction, as if he refuses to look at me. He starts to exclaim every way I've somehow wronged him. "Archie, you failed to greet me at the door. You refused to acquire proper bowls for me to use. You did not properly show me where the lavatory was. All this is showing that you do not value me as a customer. So I requested this pitcher so you would not have to be bothered by me anymore. Now away with you, and have the waitress serve me instead." As he said that last sentence, he waved his hand as if he was shooing a dog away. I didn't really know what to say, and I will admit I made a mistake here and gave an awful apology. Me, "Well, sir, I'm sorry I've made you feel that way." Archie, "It's not how you've made me feel, it's what you have done. Now again, away with you." I almost gladly left his table and waited at the register for a long time. There were only 3 or 4 tables left, including his, and there wasn't much to do at that moment. I awkwardly stand there for what feels like 10 minutes. I step into the kitchen real quick to check on some carry-out orders we have, and as soon as I step out, he's paying for his meal and leaving. I was away from the register for probably less than a minute, so he was just waiting for me to leave. He called and made a complaint about me to my boss, but luckily my boss could tell he was just someone who was impossible to please, so I didn't get in trouble. But gee, I really wish I got to know how Archie enjoyed his food. What a shame he didn't tell me. 2. I work in one of those corporate chain restaurants that have a day in the week in its name. I've been there for more than a year as a host, busser, and a food runner, and I'll occasionally hop on the floor as a server if they're short on staff for the night. This story happened last July. It was a particularly busy Saturday night. Around 11:30 p.m., everything was finally slowing down. At least on the restaurant side. The bar was still pretty packed. A small but merry band of drunkards wandered over to our restaurant from the bar across the street. They were trashed. I swear I started getting tipsy myself just looking at them. The bartenders wouldn't serve them, in accordance with restaurant policy. Thankfully, they didn't get argumentative, but they hung around in the bar bullshitting for a while. The stars of our table, however, are John and Jane Doe, the drunkest of the bunch. She was a girl next door type blonde, and he was your average 20-something with a slight paunch. He was wearing a Lion King t-shirt that has Timon, Pumbaa, and Simba silhouetted against the sun with the words Hakuna Matata beneath them. The bar had asked me to help them with their bus tubs, so I got to overhear this. Jane: "So, that's a really great shirt." John: "Like it? I got it custom made." Jane: "Really?" John: "Yep, there isn't another one like it." Time out. That is fucking bullshit. I have the same goddamn shirt, it's like $5 at Target. In fact, I am wearing it as I type this, which is actually what made me think of this story, but I digress. Jane: "I wish I could have a shirt like that." At this point I could see the gears in John's head, over-lubricated with liquor, begin to turn. His puffy red eyes gave her the once-over. John: "Well..." He leans into her and whispers something in her ear. She begins giggling and nods. They begin to slide out of their booths in a manner that only a drunk would consider to be stealthy, and head towards the men's room together. I made eye contact with one of their bartenders. The look on her face could best be described as one of, "Are you fucking kidding me?" She runs into the kitchen and screams for the manager on duty, who happened to be the newest and youngest of our managers, barely a couple of years older than myself. This manager in particular gets very uncomfortable with anything having to do with the human body. We once had a woman come in who was breastfeeding her child without covering up, and he got red-faced and couldn't stop stammering. He refused to go in there and deal with this situation, so guess who he makes go in there to break it up? Yours truly. I opened the door to the men's room, and I immediately could see her knees on the floor through the gap in the stall. I could see his pants bunched up around his ankles, and a lovely gawk, gawk, gawk sound reverberated off the tiled walls. It was the noise that got me. Guys? You can't do that in here." That was all I could think of. John: "It's alright, bud. I'm almost done." And not 5 seconds later, they stood up. I heard a rustle of fabric, and they both came out of the stall. Jane had the Hakuna Matata shirt slung over her shoulder, and John was shirtless. She was wiping her chin off with her hand. They walked past me and left through the emergency exit, where an Uber picked them up a minute later. Oh, I almost forgot, as she walked past me wiping her chin, I could see a wedding ring on her finger. But now that she has her Hakuna Matata t-shirt, I imagine that she'll have no worries for the rest of her days. 3. I work at a small sushi restaurant that's a pretty popular place with the locals. It's been around for over a decade, and the owner is really close with a lot of the customers. I was working a Saturday night shift, and it started getting really busy around 7 p.m. It was just me and one other server, so it was already very hectic, and I was doing everything I could to not feel overwhelmed. It's worth mentioning that there are no bussers or hosts. We have to do everything ourselves, so when groups start pouring in, calls for to-go orders start coming in non-stop. It gets very stressful. Around the time when it began to get busy, 4 girls walked in. They couldn't have been older than 15 years old, and from the moment they entered the restaurant to the moment they left, they were horrible. They began by ordering their drinks and food in a mocking Chinese accent. Our servers and chefs are all Asian, and they also kept screaming at me to come wait on them all the way across the restaurant. They spilled water on their food everywhere, and they purposefully ordered sides of rice and crunch, which is the fried flakes that top some sushi rolls, so they could smear it all across their table and make art, as they so put it. I was getting more and more angry by the second, but I still tried to be as courteous as possible to them. In the end, they asked to split the check in 6 different ways because they wanted to try out all their new debit and credit cards their parents had given them. And then they left. Lo and behold, 0 tip from all of them, plus a giant mess of a table. At this point, I was just glad they were gone. I didn't care about the fact they didn't tip. I was just relieved that I wouldn't have them screaming at me when I was trying to wait 10 different tables besides them. But it turns out that my coworker and I weren't the only ones fed up with their behavior. Before I could go over to the table to start cleaning up the mess the girls left, a customer that was sitting at the table behind them came up to the table and looked at the check and saw that they left no tip. He ran out of the door to the girls who were still outside, probably waiting for their rides or whatever, and began yelling at them about how their behavior was unacceptable and that their parents should be ashamed of themselves for raising their daughters to be that way. The girls began arguing back about how he had no right to talk to them that way, and that they were going to call their parents and tell them that a creepy old man was stalking them. I was too busy waiting other tables to see what really happened next, but a few minutes later, all 4 girls walked back into the restaurant sulking and asked if they could see the check. They muttered something along the lines of, "Our parents said we have to tip." I was already somewhat in shock that this was happening, but the customer that had gone after them came up to me and told me about how he had worked as a server before, and that he was sorry that I had this type of customers. He left me a very generous tip on top of that as well. Other tables that had been near the table with the girls also called me and my coworker over and thanked us for continuing to keep a smile on our face, and that they appreciated how hard we worked to give them a good time, even while dealing with that one table. I've been going through a lot of things lately, both financially and emotionally, but I feel like I've been holding it all in pretty well. But as soon as that customer left, I had to run to the back and compose myself, because I knew if I stayed out there with all those kind, wonderful people any longer, I would have burst into tears. 4. So I work at a chain restaurant, known for serving chicken, wings, and beer, and also emphasizes on its connection to sports. By 11 p.m. every server was cut except for me, as I was the closer and, due to a scheduling error, the only one doing so. At this point in the night, I'm working as hospitality outside Expo and taking care of all the tables in the restaurant, in addition to completing some closing duties. So I'm pretty dang preoccupied. At 11:30, an 8-top walks in and gets put in my section, since I'm the only one who can take care of them. Now, we close at 1 a.m. on weekends, so it was a little irritating that they waited until this late to bring a bigger party in. Around the time these guys walked in, I had 2 2-tops and a 3-top. A lot for just one person to handle. In this bigger party, I recognize one of the guests as a guy who works in the kitchen. We don't work together much since he mostly does days, and I work nights, but we've worked together a few times. After we got the party seated, I go over right away and introduce myself, ask how everyone is doing, and if there's a special occasion for coming in, it's someone's birthday, and share our drink and app specials for late night happy hour. Since there is a birthday, I tell them that they get a free birthday treat, sans birthday announcement over the speaker system, as my birthday gift to them. I use humor a lot while serving. After all this, I ask for what everyone wants to drink, and I get half the table's orders before moving to the other half so I can get their orders without them having to yell. I asked what they wanted, and the birthday dude's, I'm assuming, girlfriend looks at me and says, I said lemonade." Now, she hadn't said anything, but I apologize for not hearing her and tell them I will go get the drinks and be back to take orders. After that happened, I just knew this table was gonna be a difficult one. I got drinks out to the table in less than a minute, and after handing them out, I asked if anyone had questions or if they were ready to order. I answered a couple about wing counts and such, but other than that, everyone was good to go. So I started taking their orders since it was so late in the night. I let them know it might take a little longer than they're used to, since we make the wings fresh for every order so we don't waste any. I also asked if this was all going to be on one ticket, so I could put it into the POS better, and there would be less confusion when splitting it up at the end of their meal. They said it was all on one, so I put in their order and went to take care of my other tables. At my job, employees are offered a discount when they order food. 50% off up to $6 when you're on the clock, and 25% off up to $25 when you're off the clock. Friends and family can use the discount as long as everything is on one ticket and the employee pays. Everything was on one ticket for this particular table, probably because they all wanted a discount. The shift manager on duty that night applied the discount right away, so I didn't have to worry about it later. Their ticket went from $120 to $90. That is a pretty good deal for food for 8 people, especially because our food can be pricey. After about 20 minutes, food came out and no one needed anything right away and said everything looked good when I asked. I checked back with them after about 5 or 6 minutes. I had other tables to take care of, so I admit I took a while to check back, longer than I usually take for a first checkup, and asked how everything was. My co-worker's wife said her wings are gross, they're too salty, it tastes like someone put them in the wrong sauce, but spun them in the correct sauce after. Very unlikely, because all of the sauce buckets had been cleaned, and each sauce has its own bucket, and there is no chance of the sauces being cross-contaminated. Her husband should know that because he works here. Still, I apologized for her not liking them and told her I can get it fixed for her right away. I told the guys in the kitchen what she said, and they told me what I just expected: clean buckets, no mixing of sauces, etc. And told me to relay to her it will be 7 minutes for new wings. I go to tell her that, as well as asking if she'd like a different sauce. She says yes to both. I tell the guys in the kitchen her order directly, and I don't charge her for them. By the time her wings are done, everyone else wants boxes, so I get those, as well as their free birthday treat. This I have to ring into the POS so the kitchen can make it, but I have my manager comp it because, free. At this point, these guys have been in here for 40 minutes, and I've visited them about 4 or 5 times, mostly due to the one lady not liking her wings, getting boxes, pre-bussing. I check back with them one last time and offer dessert, but everyone is fine. So I bring out the check, tell them the discount is already applied, and say I'll be around in a bit to close the bill. This is the part where it gets odd. I give them about 2 minutes to look over the bill and get payment ready, because I know once I get my ticket, I want to pay and leave right away. But when I go back to pick it up, the guy paying, my co-worker, has numbers written on a napkin and is adding things up on his phone. I grab some plates to look busy and give them a few more minutes. Nope, still doing math for some reason. They have their discount and birthday comp, and all the math is done by the computer. So don't doubt the numbers there. So I just kept an eye on them while I do some closing duties and close out my other tables. After an additional 20 minutes of running past the table to look for payment and keeping an eye on them, my co-worker's wife waves the check presenter in the air, and my shift manager goes to pick it up, since I had dirty dishes from another table to put in back. I come back out, and there's a $50 bill and a credit card in there. My shift manager wasn't told anything specific by the table on how to ring in the payment, so I ask, just to be sure before I ring this in, are we gonna do $50 in cash and the rest on the card? I do this all the time for multiple forms of payment. Apparently this was a stupid question to ask, because they scoffed at me and snapped a quick, yes! I rush back to the POS, close the ticket and tag their rewards count to the bill, and give it back, wishing them a good night, a happy birthday one more time, and to have a good weekend. When they leave, I go to check the tip, not expecting much, but at least something, and see a big fat 0 on the tip line, and 30 cents sitting on the table. At this point, I just want to go home, so I laugh it off and share my bounty amount with the guys in the back and my manager. Everyone guesses that this guy wasn't prepared to pay for 8 people's food at all, and used the wing mishap to justify giving me nothing. So long story short, I'll have to try not spending that tip all at one place. Can't wait to work with this guy again. 5. I used to work at a dog-friendly restaurant in a pretty big, progressive hippie city. Our name even has a pun of our city's name and a breed of dog. I loved working there because the food was good, my co-workers were all amazing, and I basically got paid to pet dogs all day. I always made sure if I was going to pet a dog, I would ask the owner if it was okay. You never know, maybe the dog is nervous or a little aggressive and doesn't enjoy being petted. When I got the go-ahead, I let them smell me, then pet them, as you should always do. Cue old Biddy, as I'll call her. Scene. Out on the patio. Old Biddy is sitting with her dog in her lap. As I walk up to the table to take her drink order, I noticed her breed of dog is the same breed as our restaurant's logo. Me, oh my goodness, talking to the dog. Look, it's you in our sign. Old Biddy, oh yes, it's half the reason we came here. Me, well thanks for coming. Even if it's just for that. Do you mind if I pet him? I'll be sure to get him some water soon. Old Biddy, why sure, I don't see why not. Me reaches out to let him smell me. Hey bud. Dog. Arrgh, and furiously bites me, breaking the skin. Me hating confrontation and not wanting to alarm anyone. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Old Biddy. Oh, don't worry, honey. He does that sometimes. I take her drink order and walk inside to wash my hands and go find a Band-Aid. Otherwise, she was totally pleasant. Sweet old Biddy. But her blasé attitude about her dog biting me to the point of bleeding rubbed me the wrong way. If your dog does that sometimes, don't let people pet them. That's the whole reason why I ask. Not just for me, but for your dog. PSA, if your pupper gets nervous and bites people, and you still want to take them out to have fun, don't let people pet them, especially when they explicitly ask. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates number 5. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I was thinking about a story, was number 2, about the couple in the bathroom. And I'm pretty sure they were probably married to each other and perhaps were just doing a little bit of role play. Unless their kink was to actually make a point of going to the bathroom so the servers could see them, and then have them come in and try to break it up. In which case, that's a bit heinous, because I don't really approve of, you do your thing, whatever gets you off, make it happen. But when it comes to involving unwilling participants, even in a passive way, I'm not really down with that. Although that's hardly a very controversial statement. Okay, with that I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.